Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions, or if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode. All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. Today, I'm joined by someone I'm so thankful for these type of episodes for a multitude of reasons. I personally do not know one individual who can tell me with a straight face that not everybody in America should conceal carry firearms if they feel free to do so. And because it's not just an American right, it's everybody deserves to feel safe and have that safe place and create it in the way they see fit. So I'm so thankful for Miss Denise joining us all the way from across the states. Thank you for time traveling in with us over Zoom.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, let's just dive straight into my favorite part, laying the foundation of who our guest is. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your childhood, and did you grow up around firearms? What is it for you that really drew you, to this industry?
So I did actually grow up around firearms. My dad is an avid shooter. And I, grew up with my own little gun in the gun cabinet that I could go take out and take out back and shoot whenever I wanted. My dad carried, he still does carry every day, but my dad never put a lot of focus on self-defense. It was more the sport of it. Used to go and watch dad at the gun club, shoot clays with the men, and whatnot. And then I became a teenager, and who wants to hang out with dad? So I got out of it for many, many years. And then it was actually my dad got my oldest child actually shooting. And he was really good at it. And then my dad was teasing me and said, your mom used to know how to shoot a gun. So I picked up a gun again after all those years and realized how much I really loved it. And I know we're going to get into it, but I am a domestic abuse survivor. And during those times of my life, I never even considered having a firearm on me. And then when I got back into it, I realized like, wow, this makes me feel safe and this makes me feel good in a way I hadn't felt in a lot of years. So I started carrying every day, and then I got into teaching. My state, I live in Massachusetts, and my state requires a licensing class for everybody to even own a gun in your house. So that's mostly what I teach, is I teach that very basic safety law class that people need to get started. And then I'll take beginners to the range, like a learn to shoot kind of thing. I leave the more advanced stuff to the more advanced people who that's not my lane, and it's not what I enjoy.
Well, I think it's definitely important to do what you love when it comes to teaching. I know that you can always tell a disgruntled instructor or somebody who's frustrated about their job or someone who doesn't like teaching, and it's going to show in how they affect other people. When it comes to something like firearms, having a teacher who enjoys what they do, one of my favorite quotes is, "You're never going to do great work unless you love what you do." That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So enjoying teaching and the effect you have on other people being the most significant valued currency known to human race. I think it's very important to love what you do. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be that first person to say, okay, listen, this is a boom boom stick. It's not just going to go off by itself. You have to pull the banger switch.
Yeah, so that is a lot of what I do because again, Massachusetts, and I live in not a rural part of Massachusetts. I live in a very suburban area. not far from Boston, not far from Providence, Rhode Island. So I don't live in an area where there's a lot of gun culture.
Mm,
A lot of these people have never seen a gun, don't know anybody who's ever owned a gun. No one in their family owned a gun, and they never thought they would ever see one, never mind own one. So they come to me very, very green, and they flinch when it goes off for the first time. So a lot of my teaching is just getting them to be able to be safe with it, first and foremost, obviously, to learn the safety of it, and second, to get the confidence to just hold it up and pull the trigger. Which is why I said I don't focus on the advanced level stuff. I'm not trying to teach anyone to shoot bullseyes. I'm not trying to teach anyone to shoot at 1,000 yards. I want them to be able to point it down range and pull the trigger and not drop it
mm.
or flinch when it goes off. And I, I like that role because I feel like, I use the analogy of a kindergarten teacher is no less of a teacher than a calculus teacher, but the
Mm.
kindergarten teacher gets the kids excited to learn calculus. And if the kindergarten teacher discourages them from school, they're never going to enjoy calculus. So I hear so many people say that they were scared off a range or intimidated off a range by a more advanced level instructor that doesn't know how to come down to that beginner level, that they get scared and they never want to go back, and they say, I'll never do that again. I got yelled at, he yelled at me, this, that, and they don't want to do it. So I like being that nurturing, safe environment that gets them excited, and gets them comfortable enough that they can learn and want to learn more and want to better their skills.
Mm. And I think that's definitely the most important. When I know for me and my family, firearm safety is very important. I tragically lost one of my family members to gun ignorance, and there's nothing worse than getting a bad phone call, losing a loved one. If it can be avoided, even more painful, because you
Yeah,
ask the
I'm
questions,
sorry
what
about
can I
that.
do differently? Like, and I really do appreciate that. It definitely caught me off guard. I had no idea that that would even be a possibility. Like, it's no secret that I enjoy firearms. I use firearms as responsibly as I can, and I use firearm education as a way for me to bond with my friends, bond with their children, to help them keep their kids safe. I'm not a superstar, I'm not an expert, but the fundamental basic stuff of, okay,
Yep.
let's talk about the what we don't do. Never treat, keep,
Mhm.
keep. And let's add that fifth rule of making sure you understand everything that's behind what you're shooting, not just the
Yep.
small stuff. Basic stuff like when you go to a mountain, do you clear behind what you're shooting? Small stuff.
Yep.
That is where the foundation is built. And you cannot have a weak foundation and expect that house to grow, or that skyscraper. I'm near Seattle over here, so the skyscraper is never going to keep going up in the sky if you don't have a good foundation. So what you're doing is
Correct.
critical work.
Yeah, you got to have that good foundation, and again, you can't scare people away, and people
Mhm.
get scared away. I've been made to cry on a range, with all my years of experience. Just last year, I took a class that I cried on the range and almost walked off the range from an instructor that just wasn't treating the situation the way he should have, I think.
Mm.
So I can't imagine being a beginner with no experience and going into a situation like that. Obviously, that wasn't a beginner level class, but um, nonetheless. So I hear the stories all the time, and that's my niche. And the other part of my niche is the diversity in my classes.
Mhm.
I don't fit the mold of the typical gun owner, and I hate to use that. I do, but it's the reality. The stereotype
It's
exists for a
definitely a
reason.
stereotype and a stigma that anybody
Yep.
who has a gun in America, they're just a cowboy. They're out there open carrying a
Yep.
judge, an
Yep.
AR-15 in their back pocket underneath their shirt
Yep.
poking out. Or
Yep.
I've seen people with samurai swords. I don't put anything past Americans, honestly.
Right, right. And I live in a very, very liberal area of the country, a super liberal area. And I hate to make it about politics because I don't think guns should be political. I think the right to save your life and the right to protect your life should be universal. But the
100%.
fact remains is that it is a political issue. So I live in a very liberal area where most of these people are just automatically anti gun because they think they're supposed to be. So I like being that person that, I work in healthcare. I, volunteer at my kids' school. I volunteer on the baseball team, and I carry a gun. So I like being that person that shows them that you don't have to fit that mold. I also teach mostly at a gun shop that is also very, very, what's the word I want? A very safe place for
Mm,
people, all different people. My classes are very diverse as far as skin color, ethnicity. I teach a couple classes a year that are dedicated just to members of the LGBTQ community, so
badass.
that they can feel safe in an environment, and not feel like the typical person in the gun shop is going to make them feel uncomfortable.
Mm,
um, I have another friend of mine. There's an area not far from me that has a high Dominican and Puerto Rican and Colombian a bit population, and he is also a gun owner for many years. And he helps me teach a class where he translates legal terms into Spanish for people where English is their second language. So, they can speak English and they understand, but when you're translating the laws and the legal terms, he backs me up and translates a little bit so that they can get a great understanding of it. So
yeah.
yeah, I've actually had people come to that class who have told me that they've walked into other gun shops and been told they couldn't own a gun because they weren't born in the US.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, no, you
What?
can own a gun. Like you can own a gun.
Oh my
The
goodness.
best the best was one gentleman who came in and told me he was told he couldn't own a gun because he wasn't born in the US. And I said, well, were you born? And he said, Puerto Rico. And I said, Puerto Rico is the US. But
Oh
he
my
was
goodness.
legitimately told by a gun shop that he couldn't own a gun. And I'm like, no, that is not true. And we're going to get you your gun license. Don't you worry.
Well, that's right there, that gun ignorance. It's something definitely that's
Yeah.
important to combat because I've been told by, people that I'm not gonna, drop names here. I got a lot of listeners in my family, so but I'm gonna just say that,
Yeah.
some people that join from different demographics where their parents grew up not really liking black people. So I don't know. They might have let it slip a couple times that black guy with a gun is asking for trouble. And that's definitely a way to, one, set me off, and two, I black guns are not just for your typical guy that looks like John Wayne or dresses like John Wayne. Guns are not
Yeah.
for the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. Guns are for me. They're for my grandfather, who was a civil rights activist. They're for my mom, who went against her family's wishes and married a black guy anyway. They're for everybody. They're for my stepfather, who's an Air Force veteran. They're for my little sister, who is in California and being told by the government there that you need less bullets to protect yourself from criminals who are going to break the law and carry as much as they want. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There's a whole lot of crazy stigmas that surround
Yes.
who deserves to carry guns, and it seems to always benefit the politicians who are putting out the rules, and at
Yes.
the same time be a disadvantage for those who are supposed to abide by these quote unquote laws. I think they're unconstitutional, so I would call it edict. So that's
Correct.
just my personal opinion. I'm not a legal expert, but one plus one is not three, and
Right.
you
Yeah.
having a way to defend yourself is important.
Right. And when you get to the laws, and I tell people this all the time, if you think you are an advocate for equal rights, or that you are not racist or not xenophobic or any of the other things, yet you support gun laws that disproportionately affect people within a certain community because you thought the headline of the gun law sounded great and you didn't read through the entire legislation to realize how it disproportionately affects people of certain races, ethnicities, religions, or whatever, then you're not truly an ally to those groups and you don't
Mhm.
truly support them. Because I feel like some of those groups of people are the ones who should carry guns even more because they're unfairly targeted for violence for merely being who they are.
100%. It's happened to me personally.
Yes.
I've experienced being targeted because of the color of my skin, and I'm not.
Mhm.
There's nothing great about being terrified, and you like to know true fear, being targeted by your skin, the color of your skin, by people who want to, harm, maim, lynch, however you want to put it. That is a fear of true terror, and I
Yeah.
never thought I'd experience. But there's true evil in the world, and a great way to protect yourself from bats, knives, and guns is with a firearm, and guns are distance tools. You do not want to be up close with, you don't want to be closer to harm. You just don't.
Yeah, no, I know people all the time. Well, I carry a knife. Do you know how hard it is to use a knife on a person? It is not easy. That is not something, you're just going to do because you carry this little pocket knife in your knife and you've never in your pocket and you've never actually trained with it. Or, oh, I carry pepper spray. Even pepper spray can be difficult to use if you don't really know how to use it and it spray backs at you,
The wind
sprays
blows.
back at you, or the person you're spraying is immune to it because there is a percentage of the population that is immune to it. And again, they got to get a little bit closer. Nothing levels the playing field like a firearm.
Mhm.
And that's just the way it is. Nothing makes me equal to that 6'4" man who wants to do me harm than a firearm. It's just the
Gotta
way it
keep
goes.
the banger in the hanger. You have to do it. And
Right.
I definitely am obviously, this channel, the guests I have on, some of them are not too inclined with the or can agree with the idea that everybody should own firearms. They think, well, only if you're in the military or only if you're this. Who are you to tell somebody who is like I said it before when we were chatting. I do not know one single lady in my life who has not been preyed upon in one way or another, or who suffered or know somebody who has suffered from domestic violence, or being chased, attempted kidnappings, putting zip ties on handles, putting pieces of paper around windshield wipers. That happens up the street at the Fred Meyer in my state.
Yep.
And it's terrifying what we have going on in our country. I think every mother, my mom, my sister, the ladies in my life, I always want to be, seen as a voice for them, to speak up and
Mhm.
say they deserve to keep themselves safe. There's no one who can give me a good reason why they shouldn't own firearms. That's
Yep.
their business, and it's how they want to be safe. Call 911 and wait if you want to.
Yep.
You might be waiting a while in Seattle after they got defunded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely 100% right. You are 100% right. And it's amazing to me especially when men. I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on the men for a minute,
Please
but
do.
especially like when the men I work with or something say, "What are you so scared of? Why are you so paranoid?" And I'm like, 1 in 4 women are victims of domestic assault, and 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted in their life. The odds are against me here,
Those are just the
and
ones that report
it
it too.
right, and that's grossly underreported, probably. What's funny to me is, you know, people, you have like a 1 in 11 million chance of getting bit by a shark, yet people's fear of sharks is seen as rational. You have a 1 in 10 million chance of getting into a plane crash, yet people's fear of flying is considered completely rational. Yet and I don't want to say fear because I don't fear men. I understand that most men are good. But my caution around men I don't know is seen as completely irrational. But yet,
But that's ridiculous.
right, right. But yet, the same man who's telling me that I'm irrational for being cautious or, want to take my safety into my own hands is irrational is scared to go to the beach because he's scared of a shark. Well, you have a heck of a lot less chance of getting bit by a shark than I have of getting attacked. So,
100%.
why is it irrational?
It's definitely not. I mean, it's important to be cautious. It's important to be careful, to have situational awareness, to respect yourself and love your family members enough to look out for them, to
Right.
be a shepherd of your flock as a parent or as a member of the community. As for myself, I came back from the military with a sense of wanting to help others and keep my family safe. So yes, I'm definitely going to carry the banger in the hanger always,
Yeah.
as long as
Yeah.
I'm doing it responsibly with sober, moral, prudent, and always understanding what deadly force constitutes. This is a good shoot or not a bad shoot situation. Those scenarios are very important, and there's a bunch of ways to understand what a bad
Right.
shoot is. I can go on your channel or We the Female and find a whole bunch of what a whole bunch of bad
Right.
information looks like, and get some good information instead. And that's something that I appreciate about gun advocates in the world.
And that part of it right there, what you just said, the choice to do that is a very personal choice. And it's not a choice that I feel I can push on others. I would never push the idea of, oh, you have to carry a gun onto somebody who didn't want to, or somebody who wasn't ready to, because it
Mm,
is a very, very personal choice. You got to be right with yourself and right with a lot of other things in life to be willing to make that decision. Your family has to understand that this is the decision I'm going to make, and if it means I go to jail, it means I go to jail, or if it means we lose our house in legal fees, it means we lose our house in legal fees. But this is the choice that I am willing to make for myself and for you guys. And not everybody's okay with that choice, and that's okay too.
mm.
And it is not something I would ever force on anybody. It is something I encourage if you want to and are willing to, but it's not something you can force out of people either.
Mm. I can definitely agree with that. I can get on board with that 100%. I would
Yeah.
never want anybody who doesn't want to eat broccoli or eat
Right.
especially for me it's cauliflower. I would never want to eat cauliflower, and shame on my parents for making me eat it. I'm never gonna turn around and do that same thing when it comes to firearm safety. It is a personal decision, and
Right.
there's a lot of information out there
Yep.
about being a responsible gun owner and going through with that. But what drives your passion when it comes to teaching another person how to be a responsible firearm carrier or gun owner?
What drives my passion? Um, I think a couple things. I think that first time person that pulls the trigger and didn't think they could. That for especially when I do have a domestic violence survivor. I don't work just strictly with domestic violence survivors, but when I do, those ones that just look it back at me with the wide eyes and go, "Oh my God, I did it," and oh my God, I'm in control of this. That makes me really, really happy. The other part that makes me really happy is, again, like I said, I live in Massachusetts, but I live right on the Massachusetts Rhode Island line. Massachusetts and Rhode Island have two very different licensing protocols, and so even if you live in Rhode Island, you can be 5 minutes from the Massachusetts border. You have to have your license in Rhode Island, and then you still have to take a Massachusetts class from a Massachusetts instructor like myself. So, one of the things that drives me is when I get those people who have had their Rhode Island license for 10, 15, 20 years, and they have to come sit through this kind of basic safety class. And at the end of the class, I always ask them, "Did you learn anything?" And they look at me and they go, "Yeah, I did. You actually said a few things I didn't know." And these people have been carrying a gun for 10 years, and
Ah,
I
that is
touched
amazing.
on something they didn't know, whether it was a law, whether it was, whatever it might have been, but I touched on something they didn't know. And that makes me feel like $1,000,000.
Excellent. That's that
Yeah.
type of selfless. It helps somebody else. Being a
Yeah.
servant of humanity, a community leader. That's that type of stuff that
Right.
I admire about what you do. So thank you so much for doing that. What's one thing that you would like to change? A stigma or an idea or something that's portrayed to people who aren't into guns about the firearm community that you'd like to change, or that
Um,
or that you
I
could
think
see change in the years.
I I think it's kind of what we touched upon before, the newer gun owner. The newer
Mm.
gun owner is not our grandfathers. It is not, our old, or I should say my my old grandfather. The new gun owners look more like you, look more like me. We are more progressive. We're not as closed-minded about a lot of other things. We're not bigots and we're not racists. A lot of people border on the more conservative side of things, but not to the point of that extreme conservativeness. That we are young and, well, younger. I'm not that young, but younger, and we're more progressive, and we really just care more about wanting to protect ourselves because we see that it is not always up to somebody else. It is up to us. I think that's starting to change. I think social media has actually done a lot for that. A lot of the big influencers who, put out some great content just showing that, you don't have to fit that old fashioned stereotype, you know. Um, I think that's and the women, the women are getting more recognition in the gun industry. There are still a lot of things about it that are tough sometimes for the women, but it's getting better. It's getting
Mhm.
better.
I think
Still some
all
work to
good things
do, but
definitely takes some time and some work.
right.
One of my favorite things about this, the area over here, there's not a lot of, you know, a lot of people that look like me. I'm just going to be kind of
Right.
honest here. There's not a lot of people that
Yeah.
look like me who are into learning more about their rights when it comes to firearms. They are against things that I could agree with. Like everybody should be against police brutality. Everybody should
Absolutely.
be feel like we should remove the idea of racism. Let's get rid of it. I think we should all do that. But I don't see a lot of them doing something that involves firearm understanding. Removing gun ignorance from
Right.
the Black community is a big deal to me. It's
Yeah.
very something I speak out often with the youth in my area when I run into some youngins talking about, I should fuck that up.
Yep.
I'm gonna try to avoid some words to keep it PG today, but like saying stuff like that, and I say, hey man, why not just try to talk it out before you try to spark it out. Once you
Yeah.
pull that trigger, you cannot take it back. There's no going
Right.
back. That's someone's child.
Yeah.
You want to grow up and be a dad one day, you want to be better than your parents, start now. Remove
Yeah.
those ideas of that toxic culture where we have to harm another person just because they wear a different color, they're from a different part of this beat rundown town. And
Yep.
the hood ain't all it's cracked up to be. Get the hell out of there. So that's
Yeah.
one of my favorite messages to preach over here. And another one is that I've noticed is every time I go up to where I go shooting, I go up to the sticks. I go to the mountains. I go out where the rednecks are, whatever. Nothing but giant American flags, trucks,
Yep.
all
Yep.
diesel. They're definitely not going green up in there. I go out
Nope.
and shoot with them. And
Yeah.
I first pull up to shooting pits with 100 white dudes. Nobody they look over, I get a head nod. They ask me about where I bought my AR-15 and how I put it together. They ask me about my pistols. They ask me why I do these drills. They don't ask
Yeah.
me what the hell I'm doing there. Nobody
Yep.
cares. An
Yeah.
armed society is a polite society, and I
And
encourage,
that's changing. That's
and I
changing
love
because,
it.
40 years ago, they would have looked at you with a side eye, you know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? Or, even today we see, the YouTube videos of, the women who stop men who look like you on the sidewalk of, well, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Or why
Mm,
is your car parked here? So, having that changing in the gun community is awesome. That
yes.
is awesome to hear. And like I said, the range where the shop that I teach at primarily, I teach like one or two classes there a month. They have a range attached to it, an indoor range. And there are days I walk in there and the diverseness of the clientele just makes me sit back and smile and go, this is awesome. This is awesome. It's not just a bunch of, I'm going to say it, it's not just a bunch of old white dudes.
Hmm.
And it's great. It's great. And I think I've added to that because again, I teach those classes with my Spanish interpreter friend, and so my business card gets out there, and people are like, oh, you should go to her class because she's going to make you feel comfortable. And sometimes I get people who drive like an hour away, and like this is not an uncommon class to have in my state. They're kind of on every street corner. Someone's offering this class, a dime a dozen, and sometimes I see people's addresses, and I'm like, you drove like an hour away to get to this class. And they're like, yeah, they're like, because I heard that like you were awesome and that you make everybody feel welcome. And I walked into a gun shop near my house, and there was the giant Confederate flag hanging there, and I felt a little uncomfortable. And I'm like, I can understand. Come on.
Yeah,
I'll take
I'm gonna
care
be
of
honest.
you.
I'm a dip out too when I see that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my
Absolutely.
scene.
And I wouldn't teach at a shop that had it. I,
Yeah.
I would not teach at a shop that had it. And that's the other, and I hear that from other instructors too, who like, teach at shops that or teach at places, and they're like, oh well, it's not my shop. I just go there and teach. But you're teaching where they're advocating that.
Mhm.
That means you're okay with it. You're saying you're complacent with that. I would not teach at a shop like that. I'd walk in and walk right back out and say, this is not for me.
This is
This
not.
is not that this is not what I want my name associated with.
Mhm.
See you
There's nothing.
later.
There's nothing wrong with standing on your word and standing up for what you believe in. There's
Yeah.
one like contrary to the normal belief of society. There's one very very special flag that is not just for, like you said, old white guys. It's for me. It's for you. It's for people who love who they love and they're unashamed and unapologetic about it. It's for people who are still trying to figure out that it's okay after having bad time with their parents, growing up who they are. This is for every skin color, every nationality. This American flag, it's for all of us. And you know
Yeah.
what? That's good enough for me. That's good enough for
Right.
the United States military, and that's good enough for my family. And that's a flag I'm cool with. That's I can get
Yeah.
down with that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I don't want to be associated with that. And I wouldn't be, because I feel like that reflects upon me. And how can I expect my students to feel comfortable in a place that is putting in their face something that makes them feel uncomfortable? And I am not a member of that community. It's not for me to speak on, and I can't understand the feelings that go with it. I can be empathetic towards them, but I don't understand them. But I have been told by enough people, this is bothersome and offensive to me. And I don't need to understand why. That's all I need to hear. That offends you? You got it. You won't see it from me. I don't need an explanation as to why, and I don't need to understand. It just
100%.
it is what it is. And
It is what it
I
is.
yeah. Yeah, it's not for me to judge.
I can get down with that too. So something you mentioned earlier, um, I want to say to all those listening out there, it's definitely going to be on their mind as well. So you brought up what it's like to work with somebody who's a domestic violence survivor. You also brought up that you have a personal experience with that. What is it like for you to have that effect on somebody, to remind them that they might have that power that they feel like that was taken away from them, or they might have a fighting chance in it if a situation ever shows up again?
I think that's the greatest feeling in the world. And I don't even think I can put that feeling into words. Knowing what it's like to be in that, knowing what it is like to fear for your life all the time, knowing what it is like to not have anyone help you, because that is a very scary reality for many people, um, including law enforcement and the court system, and including friends and family. And I'm not knocking my friends or family, but they at the time didn't know the extent. Most of them probably to this day still don't know the extent. um, and having no one, feeling like no one is there to help you. And if I can feel like that person that gives them this much help and this much hope, um, and this much feeling like they have a little bit of power over themselves again, it's probably the best feeling in the world.
Wow. That that definitely touches my heart on a lot of different levels. I've never been able to have a feeling of positivity like that when unless I was helping somebody go through and grow through something that I personally experienced.
Yeah.
A lot of people find these parallels between their life and another's life, and I really admire that you're constantly working in a field and directly putting yourself in that line of remembering what happened to you, and you're
Yeah.
still walking through that fire. One of my favorite quotes is that hope, like look walks up to a fire, looks at it, and tries to find a way around. Faith, walks through, tramples right through it, and gets to whatever's on the other side. And you are definitely a person who walks in faith with your career field. So I admire that.
Yeah. I try. It's taken a long time. It really has. My abuse was, God, over 25 years ago. And even the closest people to me did not know it, for the very longest time. There were very few people who knew a little bit. But like I said, my family, even to this day, probably does not know the extent of the abuse that I went through. And I will caveat that with saying all abuse is abuse and all abuse is valid. And I don't care if it's not physical, I don't care if it's financial, emotional, medical, whatever. All abuse is valid. There is no abuse that is worse than others. But there are different dangers associated with each one. And I don't think my family fully knows how much danger I was actually in, and what I actually went through. So it took me a very long time to be able to talk about it with some of my closest, people, and it was over the years, little bits, more and more and more came out, and then I was able to start talking about it in my classes a little bit every once in a while when I would have a class of all women and it would come up. I was able to start talking about it, and I was much more comfortable in that personal setting, in that, not one-on-one, but in a small classroom of 10 people, I felt much more comfortable speaking about it. It has only been the last couple of years where I'm finally starting to find my voice to talk about it like this, to post things online about it, or to even at work, at my full time job, when we have a patient, or when somebody says something and I turn around and I will say something about domestic abuse. It's taken me that long to even be able to just speak, not even just about myself, but just about abuse in general. Um, and it's been good. It's been good. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel good. It makes me happy, and it makes me really happy when I get those messages from people, the DMs on Instagram, or the people who walk up to me and say, I had a coworker not that long ago call me out of the blue and tell me that her daughter was going through a traumatic situation. And, what kind of advice could I give? And I spent 2 hours on the phone with this coworker who I'm not super close with. And it just makes me feel good that people now feel like they can come to me and ask me. And even if it's just for a shoulder to cry on, because sometimes that's just all you can do.
Wow. There's a lot you just said right there. I try not to get too emotional during these, but I just found out 2 days ago that one of my family members is experiencing domestic violence, and it's going to be something that I have to deal with. If it's not already resolved next week, I'm going to be having to do some intervention work, and I have to, obviously it's no secret you have to be careful about these things.
Yes.
There's no book on how to go about it. Um,
No.
the best thing to do is to let that person know that, hey, you're there for them, and
Yes.
you wish you could do, you will do whatever needs to be done to keep them
Hmm.
safe. And I think that's an important thing. But it's I'm kind of in shock and awe right now. There's a lot of great things that human beings I've experienced in life can do. Sharing the worst part of your life in a way to let somebody else know that they're not alone is the most powerful, impactful statement that you can say, and it stands against every single person out there who is committing these atrocious acts regularly. I
Yeah.
really admire that you have the strength and the tenacity to stand up and say that you're not alone, ladies and guys too that experience it, and you can get through this, and you don't have to just get through it and then there's no light anymore in life. There's still light you can provide to others, and you're not broken. You might be just a little bit bent, and
Yeah.
that's something I often preach to my veteran friends about what they experience. So thank you for doing what you do. That is it's absolutely impactful, and it's huge.
I'm sorry to hear about your family member, and if there's anything I can do to help, if that person needs someone to talk to, please, I am happy to.
Oh, I
Um,
definitely will. I probably definitely the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give her your information and
yeah,
ask
please do,
for her to reach out to you.
please do. It's always hard. And this is one of those things when people say to me, "Oh God, I'm so sorry you went through that," or, "I wish you could change it." And it's a weird question, right? Because obviously, I wish I never went through some horrific abuse and torture. But the other side of that is, I always say, it made me who I am today. And I don't know if I would be the same person that I am today. And when I look at my children and I look at my daughter, who, takes no crap from anybody, sometimes a little too much so, sometimes. And she says to me, "Mom, you taught me. Mom, I'm never gonna, not speak up for myself or whatever." Or I look at my sons and how they treat women and significant others, and how kind they are, and how aware of that stuff they are. You know, I I I sit back and I go, well, I got something out of it because it made me who I am, and I'm not sure that I would have had all that without it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a weird feeling, it's a weird feeling to almost be grateful for the lessons you learn from it, because nobody wants to be grateful for that. but in ways I am.
Yeah, going through things and growing through things are two. It takes time to develop that mindset change, and
Yeah.
diamonds are formed within pressure. And when you go through these horrible experiences, you can look at it as, this is the end of it. There's no moving forward with this. But I think it's essential as human beings that we do stand up and say, you know what, I still have dreams, I still have life left in me, I still have love to give to the world. This
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the end of my story, and my journey is not over.
Right.
And that's taking back your power is a
Yeah.
way I like to look at it. And firearms are definitely a way that I've been able to take back my power by removing fear. I no
Yeah.
longer have to worry what it's like to lay down in a grocery store and hide behind cereal boxes while someone's shooting at another gang member. I don't have to worry about um you know I don't have to worry about my wife, people attacking us on the streets in Seattle. I don't
Right.
have to worry about my friends, or when I'm at work, I don't have to worry about my buddy getting robbed right in front of me at gunpoint because I intervened. And these
Yep.
these are the type of things that I'm thankful for. um
Yeah.
Learning about firearm responsibility is huge in my
Yeah.
life, and I can tell it's a big important part of yours.
It is. It is. And there's lots of ways to take back your power, right? And there's tons of ways to take back a piece of your power or a piece of your body autonomy. There's lots of different ways, and you got to. Every abuse victim has to find what works for them, and sometimes it takes multiple ones. For me, it's multiple different things. From the brightly colored hair to the tattoo to the tattoos and everything that is, no, this is my body and no one is ever again going to tell me what to do with it. And people struggle to understand that sometimes, that some of these things are just reclaiming yourself, and reclaiming a piece of yourself that was taken away from you for so long. And same thing with carrying a gun and knowing that you have the ability to protect yourself if need be. It's a very powerful thing.
Mm.
But also a very scary thing, right? Because and not scary from the point that I'm scared of guns, but I don't want to take someone's life. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to ever have to, and I hope I never ever do. It's not like I walk around looking for a reason.
Hmm.
I don't want to be that person. If anything, I think carrying a gun all the time has made me um less confrontational at times.
Hmm.
I used to be a little bit more of a loudmouth, and in the store when somebody did something stupid, or when somebody was being obnoxious to the 17-year-old cashier, I would be the person who would mouth off at them and tell them that they were an obnoxious idiot who shouldn't be talking to a 17-year-old kid like that. Where now I kind of like tone it down a little because I don't want to get into a verbal confrontation, because heaven forbid that's the verbal confrontation where the police get called and I have a gun on me.
Hmm.
So I think if anything, it's kind of actually toned my attitude down a little bit.
Just a
Not a
little
lot,
bit. I think
just a little bit.
carrying a firearm definitely made me more calm, and you
Yeah.
seek to avoid confrontation. You win every gunfight you're not in. I can
Yep.
that's 100% statistics. Okay,
Right.
you win every
Right.
gunfight you're not in, and verbal judo, practicing de-escalation. These
Right.
tactics come naturally when you are carrying a firearm. You start to
Yeah.
really value life. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war every single day of my life.
Right. Right. And not that I'm going to get into a gunfight in the middle of Walmart, over
Hmm.
somebody disrespecting the little cashier. But again, like I said, I don't live in a gun friendly state, right? So
Hmm.
even if a verbal altercation results in the police being called, and then it's, well, you have a gun on you. And so why were you the one to start mouthing off to this
Hmm.
lady? It's poor form.
It is poor
It's poor
form.
form. So now I'm a lot more polite, and I would just be like, hey, let's not give the little girl a hard time. She's just trying to do her job. What can I do to help? Kind of thing. So it's definitely toned me down just a little bit.
Definitely.
Because I definitely like calling people out when they mistreat others.
Good, good. It's important to do that. What I just
Yeah.
want to go back to something you touched on just a couple minutes ago. If what is one thing you would say to a listener, or I'm going to have a lot of my family listen to this. A lot of them have experienced domestic violence personally. What is one thing you would say to somebody in a harmful, toxic, abusive relationship, whether physical or not? what is one thing you will just say to them if they're on the fence about getting out of it, or asking for help, or reaching out to somebody? What is one thing you would say to that person?
Ooh. All right, this is going to be a tough one. That if you have family and friends that you can count on, and when you are ready, to be honest with them. Be honest. As much as you don't want to worry your family, obviously, first and foremost, be safe. Get safe. Get safe. Get yourself out of that situation. Um, but when you are ready, find the time to tell those closest to you what really went on. Because that will help you. And it will help people understand you. And that is something, like I said, my abuse being over 25 years ago, and yet my family, I think, doesn't know the extent of my abuse to this day. And to this day, I think that a lot of my family does not understand me because of it. They don't understand some of the things that bother me to this day. They don't understand some of the things I do, or some of my outspokenness about certain things. And I think it's because they don't understand the extent of the abuse. They think, I got smacked around a couple times. I don't think they know what I really, really went through. And that makes me sad. It makes me sad that, the people closest to me, maybe not the people closest, because, my immediate family probably knows, but the people close to me don't really know and don't really understand. And weren't able to help me because I kept them in the dark about it, and have for all these years. So if you have people that you can count on, when you can, open up to them. Tell them what you can, share with them what you can, and let them understand you, and let them understand how these things have changed you, so that 10, 15 years down the road, when something triggers you at a family event and everybody looks at you and goes, well, what the heck's your problem? They'll actually understand why. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that when you are able to do that, and when you're at that point in your life,
Yeah.
it'll give you some grace, and they will give you some grace. And
Yeah.
grace is a beautiful gift to give to somebody you care about.
Yeah.
I,
And I think a lot of that, it boils down to, don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed of it when you can, when you cannot be. Because I understand, people are often ashamed of this. People feel like it was their fault. Um, you know, um, it's hard. It's hard. There's a lot of hard things that go along with it. Um, so I think people hide it. They don't let people know. And so when you're ready, when you're able, I would say try to talk about it with those that you love and that you trust, and those that will be there for you. Um, if you have that in your life, and hopefully you do. And if you don't, find somebody, try to find a friend or somebody that you can really tell it all to, so that somebody really understands all of your little things that bother you, because some of those little things last a lifetime, no matter how much you try to get over them. Um, and no matter how much you move on from, and what's crazy is some of the biggest things were the ones that I could move on from. For the longest time, the smell of beer. I couldn't be around the smell of beer for about a good 7 years. The smell of beer would make me sick, even walking into a bar, or especially on someone's breath. Oh, um, and I actually got over that one. And then, but there's sometimes these weird little things that you wouldn't even think bother me. And out of the blue, you can see me just kind of like tense up, and, it's just this weird little thing. And only those very, very close to me understand why that even bothers me. And it's unfortunate, because then sometimes people do it often and they don't understand that it bothers me for a reason. So that's why I would say, let those closest to you that you can trust with that information know, so that they can know not to do those things, or help you work through what that does to you.
I think that's super important what you just said right there. I know that me as a friend of people who have suffered through any instance, when I notice those human tells, when somebody sits up a little straighter in their seat, they maybe retract their shoulders ever so slightly.
Yeah.
They slump when somebody that they might be intimidated walks by. they crunch their fist up on whatever they're doing and intently stare at somebody for more
Mhm.
than 5 seconds.
Mhm.
There's a lot of human
Mhm.
tells when somebody's uncomfortable or somebody's frustrated. And I think as a friend, what we can do to anybody who's around us is to say, hey, everything good?
Yeah.
And be inquisitive, be a protector of your friends, be an
Right.
advocate for people who have gone through things that you might not understand.
Right.
I would say cautiously be an advocate because
Right.
you never
Right.
know the extent of the situation.
And I would say to the people that are not in those situations to become one of those people who becomes aware of those things. Because so many people turn a blind eye to this, and not intentionally, right? It's human nature. We center around ourselves, and we think the best of the people around us. Obviously, we don't. None of us want to believe that any of our friends would be abusive, or our own family members, or anything like that. You don't want to think that of people, and so many people are blind to those reactions, those human tells, or those little things that could appear innocent, but yet when you start stacking them up, suddenly don't appear so innocent anymore when you think about it. To become aware of them and check on the people you love, And again, that's always a delicate situation because the person you love has to be ready to accept help. Or you become the bad guy. And also you have to make sure it is not a dangerous situation to offer them help in. But I think if more people were more in tune to others and how they treat others, I think more people would be shocked at how people actually treat their partners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I really do appreciate your insight. Um, it's never my intention to, overstep with the questions and stuff. And
No, you're
I
fine.
really appreciate you giving me the time of day when it came to these questions because it's not easy for me to ask. It's not easy for you to talk about. It's never easy to talk about these things, but that's kind of the premise of this whole human being thing, connecting
Yeah,
us, bringing down these boundaries that divide us and help others understand why the whys are important.
yeah,
Why am I an advocate for women's to carry firearms in the face of people who advocate against it, which is insanity. Why am I doing this podcasting thing, trying to help others understand things? Because I'm not a superstar. I don't have all the answers either. So me taking the time to learn is essential. I just wanted to know one last question.
yeah,
What does the future look like for you?
yeah. Right. And I'm not yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not a superstar either. I'm not an expert by any means. I teach the basics, and nor am I an expert in domestic violence or mental health or any of those things. I just base myself on my own personal experience and the need it. So yeah, I'm not an expert by any means, even in the realm of firearms, and I don't claim to be. I teach basics. I get people started, like I said, I get them excited to learn. And I'm not an expert in mental health or domestic violence other than my own experience. And I don't claim to have all the answers or know all the right things. I just want to try to be there as much as I can. And if anything, just open people's eyes to it. You and I said before we even started this how, it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men. Um, Yet, if you surprisingly, nobody knows any of the abusers. If you ask anybody, they say, "I don't know anybody who would be abusive," and it's like, yeah, you do. You do. You don't know that they're abusive, or maybe you missed the signs, but you do know them, right? Because there's an abuser for every victim. So, I made a video a couple of days ago where I actually said, "Look in the contacts of your phone, and how many women are in the contacts of your phone." you know 1 in 4 of them have been a victim, which means in theory they're abusers as well. If they're work colleagues or family or friends, they're partners, which means they're abusers as well. And their abusers don't show up to tea time and say, yeah, I gave my partner a beating last night, but that's what's happening you know
And that's the scary statistics. The
Yep.
fact that not all of them are being reported, and
Correct.
that is something that definitely intimidates me. It's something that I worry about often. You don't have to be an expert
Yeah.
to ever care about the person next to you, or the person in Massachusetts,
Correct.
or the person, in your family that's
Right.
going through a tough time. All you have to do is care. And that's the one thing I love to
Yes.
tell to people who ask, you're not a therapist. Why are you having these conversations? I try to be as calm as possible when I say you don't have to be a therapist to care or to listen. You just have to listen. It's that simple.
Right.
And
Right.
it's important. It's honestly
Right. I'm
important
not
to
offering any
spread awareness about
diagnoses.
this. Yeah, I'm not saying everybody's got
Right.
PTSD or something.
Right. I'm never going to say like, oh, that person has blah, 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 blah. I might think it, but I'm never going to say those words. I'm not offering any medical advice, but I can offer human advice
I love
and
that.
advice from
Human
the standpoint of
advice.
somebody who's been through this.
Mm, I love that. And that personal experience is so important. So what does the future look like for you? What things are you looking forward to? I know that SHOT Show was great, but what else?
Shot show was great. Shot show is always a good time. It's a bit overwhelming, but it is really exciting. I don't know. What the future is. I really don't know. Like I said, the firearm instruction is not my full time job. I work in healthcare, and I do also love that job. I work in an operating room. I do orthopedic surgery. It's really fun, and I love putting people back together. Not a surgeon. I am an assistant, a surgical technician. But I love it. So people keep asking me, am I ever going to take the firearm thing full time and leave healthcare? But I can't picture myself doing that just yet. So I think I don't, juggling the two is something I can manage at the level I'm at right now. I am very, very blessed with a couple of gun shops who kind of let me kind of come and go as I please. And I just give them dates that I'm available and they put people in the classroom for me. Um, and also, given that Massachusetts' class does not require live fire, I'm also able to do it privately. Sometimes I get like groups of friends who kind of want to all take the class together, and I can set it up that way. So I kind of like doing it just on my own terms. And it's one of those situations where I'm scared if I turn it into a full time job, I'm not going to love it as much. And it's hard to say that, like, because I really do love it. Um, but I'm afraid if I turn it into a full-time job, it's not going to be my passion anymore. And it's going to be a job. And I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. So for right now, it is more just getting the word out. Like I said, I'm trying to be more vocal publicly about abuse, and advocating more for women and other groups of people who are severely underrepresented when it comes to gun laws, pointing out the racism and bigotry within the gun laws. But I haven't figured out yet how I want to do that on a larger scale.
Mhm. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay. I would hate for somebody to tell me, or to say, "Oh yeah, Eddie, yeah, he works on elevators and escalators. That's what he does." I
Yeah.
also have 3 great dogs, first of all, okay? I like guns.
Yeah.
I have, my wife is my freaking hero. I love,
Mhm.
doing new things and trying new activities. I love listening to other people's stories and learning from their experiences, good or bad. All of it gives me perspective. And my
Yeah.
favorite thing is just to find happiness. That's what I
Yeah.
do. I try to find happiness. So
Yeah.
it's good not to be a one trick pony. Do what you do. Do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I try to, I would love to become more involved, like, as far as speaking out against the laws and the legislation. But then I very easily get discouraged that I live in Massachusetts and I'm not going to change anything. And so then I go around and around with that, and I say, well, with that attitude, nothing's ever going to change. Somebody's got to be the one to start it. And then I turn around and say, oh, I don't know if I want to be the one to start
Mhm.
it. So I kind of go around and around with it. So yeah, I don't know yet how much more, how far I want to take it, other than just, I always tell people I'm fighting from the inside. I'm fighting from behind enemy lines, trying to change, the mindset of the typical gun owner, one Massachusetts liberal at a time.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, one at a time. And I tell people that. I actually say it in my classes. Like, again, I don't make it political. But I say to people in my classes, like, look, I get it. I get where we live, right? We vote pro-choice. We vote pro-marriage equality. We vote pro, gender equality. I get it. I get it. But all the more reason why you, as one of those people who votes that way, should contact your elected officials and let them know that you also feel that being able to protect your life is important.
Mm.
That it is not a one-sided issue, that issue should kind of come on over to the other side a little bit too. So I try to get that through to people that, look, you can vote for all those other equality things. My life equality is important too. Hi.
Yes. And that is definitely important. I always find there's so much more to benefit from. Instead of worrying about the big politics. For me, how I affect change is talking to my
Right.
neighbors, letting
Yeah.
them know I care about them, letting them know
Yep.
if their children need a safe place, they can come next door if there's a family emergency.
Yep.
Or to call me and I'll kick in the freaking door. And then, if I get there before the cops, it is what it is. Sorry. I got a quick response
Yeah.
time next door. So, the small things we can do to let other people know we value them, and having those conversations with your neighbors, your community, that is where it
Yeah.
starts. Being vocal on social media. That's how
Yep.
we can also affect change. So I think you're doing a great job,
Yeah.
definitely changing the minds of people
And
in a
you asked,
positive way.
you asked earlier, like, well, what is one of the great things you love about it? And one of the great things I love is like, I, did you freeze up again?
No, we're live.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Your video froze for a minute.
Yeah, we just got a little bit of lag.
Uh, and they're like, oh no, this is great. And then, they're like, okay, but those big black scary guns. And then I show them the wooden rifle and the big black scary rifle and how they work identical. And they're like, wait a minute, this does the same thing as that. And I'm like, yep, it does. And they're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. And like that, it's like a bomb goes off in their head and they're like, wait a minute. So why do they say these guns are more dangerous? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me.
AR-15s
you
are my
know?
favorite long-barreled
Yeah.
pistols.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I live in a super restrictive state, so
Mhm.
owning anything to that like that is difficult. So,
Yeah, don't worry. They still
we have
got
a
those
hand.
those wooden guns. Those wooden guns. I heard they're great when I watch the other guys.
They're great. Yeah. Um, yeah. The M1 Garand it's tested to tried and
Yeah, the,
true.
the M1 Grand. It's my buddy's favorite rifle.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Tried and true. But yeah, I mean, we live in a state with an approved handgun roster, an assault weapon ban. The whole nine yards.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
appreciate you fighting on the front lines for women's
Yeah,
rights. It's huge.
that's
That is huge.
I do. And so, and I definitely can say I've definitely converted a few people. I've definitely gotten some people who, have actually gone out and got their license after going to the range and learning that these things are not as deadly as CNN tells them that they are. And I've also had people say, okay, like I don't think I ever want to own one, but I see what you're saying now, and I see that that you're right. There isn't really a difference between how this one shoots and that one shoots, and the ammunition is the same in the two guns, and it really is just kind of how that gun looks.
Hmm.
So I kind of proud of myself when that happens, and that's happened like quite a bit with like friends, or like I said, like I'm volunteering at the kids baseball, and like some of the moms will get together and they're like, hey, like it's a bucket list thing, we all want to go to the range, and I'm like, come on, I'll take you. And they think it's just a bucket list thing, that they just want to do it once to say they did it, and then they all look at me wide eyed. This is amazing. Yes, yes, it is. Welcome to the world.
I
And then the
absolutely
next thing
love
I
that.
know, they're all getting their licenses, and they're all calling me to ask, what was that gun I shot? Because that's the one I want to buy. Okay.
I think that's one of the most fruitful things about introducing people to firearms and removing these
Yeah.
stigmas. You do a great deal of work removing stigmas just in your area, making sure that you have LGBTQ friendly classes where they have a safe space to
Yeah.
know that they're not going to be, subject to this maltreatment that the world says they're going to get from the gun community. I've never once had any bad interactions with anybody because of my skin color, because of me marrying a white lady, because of me hanging out with a child that's not mine. He's 11 years old, shooting AR-15s with me out there in the mountains and cleaning up brass and cleaning up trash afterwards. No one bats an eye. And I think that's where we can really make a whole lot of change.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
Definitely.
I wanted. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Like, definitely, like, and that is always nice to see. Gun clubs are always kind of like a little bit of a family, especially if you go to the same range all the time. For the most part, you hear stories every once in a while of like the one where people kind of look at you side eye if you haven't been there. But like the gun club I go to, I've been going to since I was in diapers. Those old men. All the old men there remember me toddling around that place in diapers, and it's like a little family, and it's a great little place.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely got to find my own personal gun club where I can, have a safe environment for sure, for sure. I don't know any local ones, but I'm gonna do some research and see what I can get going on. Well, I definitely appreciate your insight, especially when it comes to firearms. But something I really wanted to say a special thank you about is being open and willing to talk about something that it's just a disgusting, act that horrible, evil human beings create. Domestic violence is absolutely unacceptable. I'm 110% against it. It's something that has harmed most people in my life that are ladies, and the guys, they don't even feel comfortable talking about it. So this is another step in working towards creating that place, that safe place where the conversation can take place, just like you're doing with the firearms. So I really do appreciate you opening up about that. I know people are going to listen to this and take something from it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to. I appreciate you being as respectful and, cautious with it and understanding that, it is a hard thing to talk about. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for being aware and raising awareness. Because, if it helps even just one person, if it helps
100%.
even just one person, it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely be sharing this with my family members as well.
Yes.
Where can people find you? Because I know you're on Instagram at
I'm
Armed.Princess.
Instagram. It's Armed.Princess. There are a couple of fake ones out there, so be careful. But yes, it is Armed.Princess, Armed.Princess. I am also Facebook, Armed.Princess, and TikTok, Armed.Princess. It's all the same username. I don't post too much on TikTok. TikTok doesn't like guns and knives.
Yeah, TikTok already took me all down my gun shit. All my it's
Yeah,
gone.
TikTok doesn't like much. So sometimes there's just some funny ones up there of my dog and stuff, but I am there. And Facebook as well. Yeah, and I'm always there. People can DM me. I try really, really hard to respond to my DMs. Sometimes I get a little behind on them, but I really, like at least once a week, try to sit and clear through any that I might have missed. My DMs are always open to any victim who needs anything, whether it's just to talk, whether it's to cry and just have somebody listen, whether it's any advice I can give or whatever. My DMs are always open. And I'm pretty liberal with sharing my phone number if somebody needs to talk. Same thing if anybody lives in Massachusetts or Rhode Island or Connecticut, I do the licensing for all of those states. If anybody has any questions about the laws or navigating your way around it, my DMs are open. I am happy to give you my phone number if we need to have a phone call and talk you through some of the interesting laws we have up here in New England. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
thank
It was
you.
an absolute pleasure to hear about you, more about you, your lifestyle, growing up with your dad at the range. Wow. To have a present
Yeah.
father to teach his daughter responsible firearm safety. That if I have a daughter, that's definitely something I want to make sure that we can dial in. These important factors
Yep.
that come with firearm safety, removing firearm ignorance. I'm all for it.
Yep.
Well, thank you
He and
so
I
much.
still he and I still go a couple times a year. We once a year, me, him, and my kids go clay shooting for a whole day in the summer, and once a year, me, him, and my nephew go pheasant hunting.
Oh,
We
I
still do
love
it
it.
we still do it every year, even though my dad is
Awesome.
approaching 80.
Oh, you know what? There, as long as you can pull the trigger, you can still blast one of them things out the sky. It is what it is.
He's still the best damn shot I know.
Just kick his ankle right when he's about to shoot. No,
Yeah,
don't do that.
yeah.
Don't do that. It was a joke. It was a joke. Don't come for me. Don't come for me, people on
No,
my
no, no, no,
Instagram. It was a joke.
no,
Well,
no, no.
I really do appreciate
All
your
right.
time, and I thank you
Thank you so
for
much.
giving us the grace. And I thank all
I
the
appreciate you.
wonderful listeners out there as well. Thanks for tapping in another episode of Off the Deep Podcast. As you know, Miss Denise is not here to play around. She is actively making a difference in society. There's no better way that you can affect change by reaching the hearts and minds of people who have stigmas and stereotypes on who the person you are is. You never know what's going on beyond the skin, behind the firearms, behind what social media portrays. And I'm thankful for her opening up about that. Be sure to head over our Facebook page and check the description for her links so you can find out what she's all about as well. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.